2 hours ago, the diplomatic fantasy collapsed. Iran received Trump's 15-point peace plan through Pakistani intermediaries, and rejected it within hours. Iran's military said the words that ended any remaining doubt. "Someone like us will never come to terms with someone like you. Not now. Not ever." While Trump was telling reporters the US is in active negotiations, Iran was launching drone strikes on Kuwait International Airport. The building burned on live television. And in Ottawa, Carney walked into a room with his trade team and did something Washington did not expect. He locked in Canada's energy terms before the smoke cleared. Let us be precise about what Iran's rejection means for the global economy, and for Canada's position within it. This war entered its fourth week with no exit visible. Brent crude has touched $120 a barrel during the conflict, still trading 40% above pre-war levels even after brief dips on ceasefire rumors. Americans have seen a 32% increase in average gasoline prices in a single month. The IEA's own director has called this energy shock worse than the oil crises of 1973 and 1979 combined. Iran is not simply blocking the Strait of Hormuz. It is charging ships for passage, $2 million per vessel for those it deems acceptable, nothing at all for ships connected to the United States or Israel. The world's most critical energy corridor has become a toll road controlled by America's enemy. And the only major non-Gulf oil producer with the capacity, the infrastructure, and the political stability to fill the gap sits directly north of Washington. The country Washington has spent 14 months trying to economically destroy. Before we get into what Carney did in response to Iran's rejection, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button right now. Because what is happening today between the energy crisis, the ceasefire collapse, and the USMCA deadline is the most consequential intersection of events for Canada and the United States in a generation. The strategic picture snapped into focus the moment Iran said no. Trump sent 15 points to Tehran covering sanctions relief, nuclear restrictions, missile limits, and Hormuz reopening. Iran's military mocked it publicly and kept bombing. The energy crisis continues. Oil stays above $100. American gasoline prices keep climbing into midterm season. Every day Iran holds the strait is another day Canada's leverage over the trade war grows without Ottawa doing anything at all. And Iran's rejection gave Carney the moment he had been building toward for over a year. Carney appeared before cameras in Ottawa with the deliberate calm of someone who had already made all the decisions that needed making. He opened not with a statement about Iran, but with a statement about energy. Canada's oil, he said, is not a geopolitical instrument. It is a sovereign resource. It will be available to the world on terms that reflect its true strategic value. Then he announced 4 specific actions that redrew the map of North American energy and trade simultaneously. First, Canada immediately accelerated approvals for 3 Pacific Export Corridor projects under Emergency National Interest designation. Pipelines and terminal expansions allowing Alberta crude to reach Asian markets would now move on a 12-month timeline instead of 3 to 5 years. Japan confirmed it would take the first contracted volumes. South Korea submitted a framework agreement. The European Union was in active discussions. Every barrel leaving Canada heading west is a barrel that requires no American infrastructure, no American intermediary, no American approval. Second, Canada formally linked its emergency supply capacity to the USMCA review timeline. Countries that provide stable, rules-based trade frameworks receive priority access to Canadian energy. Countries simultaneously running Section 301 investigations against Canada, calling USMCA irrelevant, and threatening new tariffs go to the back of the queue. Carney did not name the United States. Every trade lawyer in Washington understood immediately. Canada had made the trade war a direct operational cost to American energy security. Third, Canada suspended all joint energy security planning with the United States until Section 232 tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum are removed. The logic was direct. Canada cannot build emergency export infrastructure while Washington taxes the steel to build it at 50%. Every day those tariffs remain, Canada's emergency capacity expands more slowly. Every day that capacity expands more slowly, American gas prices rise further. Carney was not threatening Washington. He was explaining physics. Fourth, and this landed inside the White House with the force of a structural shift. Canada announced that going forward, all new long-term energy supply agreements would include formal sovereignty clauses preventing any signatory nation from using tariff or trade mechanisms as leverage against Canadian domestic policy. In plain language, any country that wants guaranteed long-term access to Canadian oil and gas must contractually commit to not weaponizing trade against Canada. The clause was immediately welcomed by Japan, South Korea, Germany, and the European Commission as a reasonable foundation for long-term energy partnership. Washington was conspicuously silent. Because Washington could not sign it. Not while the trade war was still active. And every nation watching understood exactly what that silence meant. Oil fell briefly on ceasefire rumors, then surged again when Iran's rejection became official and the Kuwait airport footage circulated. By afternoon, Brent held above $100. Canadian energy stocks climbed sharply. Pipeline companies hit multi-year highs. The Canadian dollar strengthened against the US dollar for the fourth consecutive session. American refinery stocks dropped as traders priced in Canadian crude terms becoming structurally more conditional for American buyers. American political reaction was bipartisan and directed at the White House, not Ottawa. Republican senators demanded emergency briefings. The American Petroleum Institute issued its third urgent statement in 2 weeks warning that Hormuz disruption combined with deteriorating Canadian relations represented a supply crisis with no short-term resolution. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce issued a direct accusation. The trade war created this vulnerability. The tariffs built this problem. Washington chose this. 2 hours ago, Iran told Trump his 15-point plan was worthless. 2 hours later, Carney told the world Canada's energy is available, on Canada's terms, to partners who treat Canada as a partner. Trump has no answer for either message. He cannot end the war on demand. He cannot reopen the strait by ultimatum. He cannot replace Canadian oil with anything that exists in sufficient volume or sufficient proximity. And he cannot undo 14 months of trade warfare with a phone call. The energy crisis Iran created and the trade war Trump started have converged into a single strategic reality. Canada holds the supply the world needs. Canada sets the terms. And the country that spent 14 months calling Canada irrelevant is now the one country in the world that cannot afford for Canada to mean it. Smash that like button, share this with someone who needs to understand what is unfolding right now, and subscribe, because the next 72 hours will determine whether Trump finally pays the price of the alliance he spent over a year trying to break.